So it would seem that we're at a very strange point when it comes to this whole PlayStation physical media situation, right? Instead of there being a level of empathy for people who maybe can't access PlayStation games without having a physical disc because PSN doesn't exist in their region, or having empathy for people who don't trust the idea of buying what essentially boils down to a physical key from Sony or any other games publisher for that matter, and having that be their way to play a certain game or access a certain game. It seems that the media has gone into full defense mode for Sony, and there's a couple of other very strange things going on that we're going to talk about in this video. Um, if you're new here, this is Constructive Game Critiques, where sometimes we go a little bit overboard with our anger about things, but generally speaking, we talk about the games industry and the things that are happening in it. I try to keep a level head about things, but I promise you, sometimes these companies test my patience. And in particular, Sony has been doing the most in the last month or so to truly test my patience. And it's, you know what, I can't even necessarily say it's Sony. It's been their fan base, which has infected just about every sector of gaming, right? There are quote unquote journalists who work at websites that are supposed to be reputable when it comes to conversations and opinion pieces on gaming that, for all intents and purposes, are Team Sony. And they've shown these hands several times. That to deny it at this point would be foolish because everybody knows, right? Everybody with a brain knows. So now we're at the point where apparently physical media bad, digital media good. Because according to several sources, all of a sudden, well, physical media doesn't sell well in the U.S. Okay, well, in the U.S. it doesn't sell well, but what about the rest of the world? What about those regions where they don't have PSN and they need a physical copy of the game to play it? You know what I mean? Like, everybody doesn't have PSN. And as a matter of fact, some people can't afford to pay for PSN. And if you're like me, PSN is not worth my time. It's just not. I don't play anything on PlayStation that I can't play on my PC or my Xbox via Game Pass online. And because of that, there's no reason to pay for that service. Like, if I'm being honest with you, I don't need access to like the first 4 Twisted Metals because I either have physical copies of them, imagine that, or I have some kind of hard drive that has the entire series on there emulated and upscaled. So I don't care, and I'm just being honest about it. You've seen this large influx of people making articles and putting out opinion pieces about what Microsoft is doing wrong, as if Microsoft is the centerpiece of the moment, the heaviest part of the conversation. And a lot of that boils down to this. And we're going to kind of jump back between what Microsoft has going on and what Sony has going on and how that all correlates, right? So right now, we've shifted from the first 5 to 7 days of this news being out there that Sony's going to go full digital in January 2028. We shifted from it's Microsoft's fault for never competing to now Asha Sharma, who, if you're a subscriber to the channel or if you've seen my videos before, I have a very high opinion of her, not because I know her. Obviously, I don't know her at all. But she seems to be on a very different mindset from Phil Spencer or any lead at a game company I've seen before. She has kind of a way of doing things that I appreciate. She's very direct, very, I need you to get this done the way I need you to get it done, and I don't want to hear anything about it because this is our situation, and in order to survive, we have got to adjust. I've stated several times that if anybody can fix the entire Xbox going exclusive and do it without having to close down a bunch of studios, it would be her. And would you know it, she announced that two big games, Clockwork Revolution and Gears E-Day, were going to be exclusive to Xbox. And instead of closing 5 studios, and I believe it's 6 now because another studio was sold. It wasn't Roundhouse, it was something Dog, Alpha Dog, I believe, which was a Bethesda's mobile studio. She sold all 6 of those studios. That being, let's see, well, she didn't sell all of them. She gave Tim Schafer studio back its independence. She gave, gosh, what was the other? Ninja Theory back their independence. Arcane is under new management. Alpha Dog is under new management. There was one other. Compulsion is independent again. So instead of destroying those studios and basically burying their legacies under a pile of Microsoft IPs that'll never be used again, she allowed them to live on. That is that's admirable to me. The firing, that was going to happen anyway. I mean, and I'm not trying to be insensitive about that. But all the people getting fired was going to happen anyway because Microsoft, like a lot of these companies, overspent during COVID. They loaded up on talent during COVID, and once people were allowed to go back outside again and games didn't sell the way they once were when everybody was stuck in the house, well, now all of a sudden you got to get rid of all these people because you're not making the kind of money you used to make. And you're going to see the effects of that for years to come, believe it or not. This won't be the last time a bunch of people get fired from any of these big companies. I digress. She essentially, and if you're in the know, she essentially put the kibosh in Todd Howard, lead at Bethesda. His seemingly stout behavior when it comes to a release lineup of games from his studio. With the biggest rumor being that he and Bethesda somehow had a huge problem with Obsidian Entertainment and their execution of Fallout New Vegas. And there's a whole weird, bitter history with that game where Obsidian apparently didn't get some kind of bonus because they didn't hit sales figures at a certain date, even though eventually they did hit sales figures. And then professional jealousies of people at Bethesda Studios allegedly being very jealous that Fallout New Vegas is actually a little bit more loved in some circles than Fallout 3 was. At any rate, Asha Sharma has put the kibosh to that. Not only did Todd Howard, whether he was forced or not, come out and say that we got remakes of Fallout 3 and New Vegas coming. He also had to announce that, yes, we're still making Starfield stuff. Yes, we're still making Elder Scrolls 6, obviously, and a new Fallout 5. Fallout 76 is getting the prequel to Fallout 3, and Obsidian is working on their own new Fallout game, to the point where Obsidian canceled the game they were working on because they got access to Fallout again. Something that probably wouldn't have happened under Phil Spencer. In doing all of this, in achieving all of these goals, and getting Todd Howard to, basically bend the knee to her will, if you want to look at it that way. The growing concern amongst PlayStation guys, and this goes back to the whole PlayStation digital release only thing, is that with her being this aggressive, and she's been very aggressive. Mind you, this woman's only been working there for 3 months. They're worried that Elder Scrolls, the new Fallouts, the Fallout remakes, none of that stuff is coming to... They're worried that none of that stuff is coming to PlayStation. And I'm of the opinion of a lot of Xbox fanboys and a lot of other digital creators out there. So what if it doesn't? So what if it doesn't? Because at the end of the day, the very same guys that were complaining and whining that, Microsoft's not trying hard enough, and this is why Sony feels emboldened to do what they're doing with physical games. You guys complained and whined about this stuff, and now you're upset once again that Microsoft is fighting dirty the same way Sony does. Oh, but they shouldn't be allowed to do that, right? Because they're Microsoft. They can't fight that way. Only Sony can fight that way. You have to fight, but you got to fight with one hand tied behind your back because you make more money than Sony does, or you're worth more than Sony, so you can't fight the way Sony fights. To that I say, hogwash. I hope Microsoft makes all of their stuff exclusive. I'm not even a pro-exclusive guy, but I hope they make all this stuff exclusive to Xbox and PC. I hope in order to play the next Elder Scrolls, you have to buy an Xbox. Because why shouldn't you? Microsoft owns their stuff. It's theirs. You want to play it? Get an Xbox. Because the last I checked, Sony didn't create Spider-Man at all. But if I don't have a PlayStation, if they make a new Spider-Man in a few years, not only am I not going to be able to buy it physically, but I'm going to have to own whatever PlayStation's out to play it. Based on their ideology at this very moment, right? But that's okay. But it's not okay for Microsoft to say, well, if you want to play the Elder Scrolls or Fallout or Gears of War or the next Halo, because the Halo campaign Evolved is coming out on PlayStation, but any Halos after that, any Fables after this next Fable, you have to own an Xbox or a PC, a Windows PC at that. And if you don't, or a Steam box, because Linux, whatever, and Proton. But if you don't own any of those, you're not playing our games. And you see IGN and Kotaku and all these other garbage news sites, and I do mean garbage, basically spreading this gospel that, well, Microsoft doesn't have the right to make these things exclusive. Absolutely they do. They bought that stuff. It's theirs. They can tell you exactly where you can shove it as far as your opinion on something they own. Because Sony doesn't own Spider-Man. Marvel does. Sony gave Marvel a very huge check so that they could pull a little stunt they're pulling with Marvel right now, and Wolverine, which comes out in a few months. But Sony doesn't make any of that stuff. Nobody at Sony was sitting over Stan Lee's shoulders when he was drawing those characters for the first time, or helping create stories for those characters for the first time. They have nothing to do with the creation of those characters. Yet they're holding them hostage on the PlayStation. So yeah, if you're on a PlayStation and you can't play Doom or the next Wolfenstein, that's tough. That's tough. Go get an Xbox. Go get a PC. No one cares. You see, again, I'm not a fan of exclusives, but I am a fan of the idea of treat me how you want to be treated, or don't complain about what happens, right? And a lot of these PlayStation fanboys, in particular the ones in the media, the ones with the loudest bullhorns, love to talk this whole, well, Xbox isn't competing. And then the moment Xbox starts to compete or does something that makes them very competitive, and it goes, we can go back and recall the old, the Tomb Raider Rise of the Tomb Raider situation where everybody raised all kinds of hell because Microsoft has secured the rights to Tomb Raider for a year. Oh, they're wrong for doing this. I can't believe they're doing this. Why are they doing this? Tomb Raider shouldn't be in school. So do you want them to compete or not? Do you want them to compete or not? Because if what I just saw in Oh No It's Alex, shout out to him, latest video, Sony is not only planning to screw you over, but they plan to screw you over quite literally in the nastiest way possible. I don't have a full context on this. You can, and I may in fact leave a link or reference to it. But Sony is apparently building their own digital Bitcoin, their own digital tokens that you can use from their own bank, the Sony bank, to buy games. This is something they're allegedly setting up with no confirmation on this, right? But with them taking games off PC, with them making their games all digital, can you imagine the kind of price gouging they're going to participate in when you have to not only buy games directly from their stores, but you may even have to or be obliged to buy their Disney dollars in order to buy said games from their stores? But this is what you PlayStation dudes wanted. This is what you wanted. Every time Xbox had a good idea, oh, that sucks and here's why. Game Pass sucks and here's why, even though Game Pass never forced you to not buy a game. Even though a lot of y'all scream from the rooftop that Game Pass is bad for games, we never stopped anybody from purchasing anything. And you got goofs like Jason Schreier putting out reports about how former Xbox studio heads, because God forbid somebody who was fired ain't going to have nothing negative to say, right? Were worried about their game sales because the games are being put on Game Pass. Meanwhile, the Forza Horizon team is like, okay, whatever. Because they sold 6 million copies in like a couple of weeks. Because they made, shocking surprise, right? They made a good game. So people bought it. Imagine that. Imagine making a good game and people buying it. So you don't have to worry about how many sales you get because if the game's on Game Pass. Oh, no, the game, like, imagine the team over at, I forget the name of the studio, but the guys and gals who made Expedition 33 being upset about the game that they put in Game Pass called Expedition 33, even though Microsoft gave them a check to do that, right? Imagine them being worried, oh, well, we're not going to sell that many copies, and this is one of the best-selling Japanese-style RPG made by a French studio, by the way, in recent times. Like, Game Pass doesn't affect game sales if your game is good. If your game's trash and people try it in Game Pass and they don't like it, guess how they going to play it? Through Game Pass, and then they never going to touch it. They're going to delete it off their machine. They never going to touch it again. That's your fault for sucking. Sucks to suck. Like, there aren't great games losing money because they're on Game Pass. Last I checked. No, it's okay stuff, mediocre stuff, bad stuff. That's losing money on Game Pass. But, you know, Jason Schreier is one of those PlayStation soldiers. Him and, God, what's the British guy's name? Not a big fan of him either. Every time there's bad PlayStation news, these dudes come out with 3 or 4 Xbox articles about how everything's terrible with them. You guys who pay attention to this media and, you know, get your news information, be careful with how you absorb that stuff. These people are full of crap, right? They're full of crap. They are grifters. They are paid shills. And Christopher Dring, that's his name. In the case of Chris Dring, he's a sponsored shill by his own words, right? These guys like PlayStation because they have a relationship with them that's either financial or otherwise. They don't care about gaming. They care about a narrative and how that narrative allows them to get clicks and views on their garbage websites for their garbage articles that are spitting nothing but garbage. And that's the truth. Because while you're sitting here talking about these firings that Microsoft's doing, that they already told everybody was doing, and you sitting here overanalyzing it and underanalyzing it, and then going over it again with 2 or 3 more coats of paint to make sure you let it set in with everybody that Microsoft bad because they firing people. We're ignoring the fact that there's a couple of hundred or at least 100 or so countries that won't be able to buy PlayStation games anymore come 2028. I haven't heard anything about this digital currency that Sony is coming up with this bank that they're making that's going to force you to have the only secondary option to buy PlayStation games being this currency, right? I haven't heard anything about that from Chris Dring or Jason Schreier, but I can hear Xbox bad news all day. Look, if you don't like Microsoft, that's fine. Again, Microsoft's not giving anybody a reason to really like them, right? But for the love of God and competition and not being Sony, especially the way they're moving, being the only ones who really have a say-so on how things are done with this hobby, you got to stop listening to and giving these morons attention. Because they are leading us straight to hell. And the fact of the matter is, some of them don't even care about gaming. They just care about the check that Sony or whoever Sony's paying to pay them gives them, so they can spew nonsense about Sony's direct competition. That's it. Like, I can see if there was an article from Jason Schreier talking about how bad this whole PlayStation thing is. Nothing. It's crickets on that. He's almost been as quiet about it as they have. He maybe said 1 or 2 things. But he's had 1,000,001 things to say about Xbox the last 6-7 days alone. Chris Dring went back into his cave and hasn't popped out with anything stupid to say about Xbox yet. I'm pretty sure he'll find something soon enough, though. Right? I probably just spoke him up by mentioning his name. It's like Pennywise or something. And IGN is just... IGN and Kotaku are pure garbage. Right? Absolute pure garbage. Why Elder Scrolls should not be exclusive on Xbox. That's the last tweet I saw from them. Elder Scrolls should be exclusive on Xbox. Why not? They bought them. It's theirs. How dare you tell somebody what they can eat out of their refrigerator in their house at their dinner table? You don't have a right to say that. They spent the money on them. They can do whatever the hell they want. And if you don't like it, go get a PC or an Xbox. Shut up, though. You don't get to dictate that. You really don't have a comment or opinion on it. You can feel a certain way, but the hell with your feelings. The temerity for IGN to actually even publish that goofy nonsense. And they expect you to swallow that up. Meanwhile, Sony didn't make Spider-Man. Sony didn't make Wolverine. Apparently, Sony's getting a X-Men game. They didn't make that. Those games are all going to be exclusive to PlayStation. If you don't have a PlayStation 6 or handheld or whatever that crap's called, that's not going to have a disc drive, and it's probably going to be some kind of handheld, and they're not going to let you buy it from any store other than theirs. If you don't have that piece of garbage, you won't be able to play any of those games. You won't be able to play any of them. But that's okay for them to lock you into their ecosystem to play Marvel games that people worldwide love those characters. That's okay, but Microsoft can't keep a game that people from the group of developers, they love to say, oh, they make janky games. Their games are so janky. But why are you so damn concerned that you won't be able to play them if they're so janky? It's Bethesda jank, right? Bethesda never makes the games the way they should. They put the game out, and then the fans make the game better. Okay, so why are you concerned? PlayStation doesn't even allow mods like that on PlayStation version of those games. Those are worst mods ever. Only thing worse is Nintendo, because Nintendo doesn't have mods at all. Why are you concerned about Microsoft keeping that game to themselves? That's my question. Why are we writing Xbox articles about Xbox bad, Xbox this? We already know Xbox is in a bad way. The lady who's running it quite literally came out and said that. We don't need you to parrot that like you a bird sitting on their shoulders. We heard what she said. She's trying to fix it. Stop deflecting from the fact that Sony is doing something very terrible. And they're screwing over their fans. Stop listening to these guys, man. They are compromised. Jason Schreier, all these guys are compromised. These are compromised media personalities. They're not going to tell you the truth. They want to steer you in a certain direction because it's about the money for them, or it's about their fandom for something. In which case, why the hell are you working at a place that's supposed to be neutral? Why are you working in this industry at all? Just go build your own website and spout your nonsense. But the money's too good where you are, huh? That's all I got for today, man. You guys, you know what I'm saying? Like I always tell you, enjoy your games, avoid the grift. By all means, stop listening to these dudes, man. Like, Sony snuck this whole we not doing physical disc anymore thing right up to everybody's doorstep about 20 or so days ago. You didn't hear a single rumor about that, but go back 20-something days ago, and I guarantee you there were at least 5 or 6 articles from Jason Schreier and Christopher Dream talking about people getting fired at Xbox. Nobody knew, nobody had any idea that Sony was about to pull this stunt. But they had a whole week's worth of articles each talking about how Xbox was about to fire people, even though Asha Sharma already came out and said that. They had a bunch of articles talking about how id Software was cut down to like 14 people, to the point where the id Software lead developer had to come out and say, no, we're about the size we were when we did Doom 2016. id Tech is alive and well. They had about 5 or 6 articles. Oh, they're going to close down id. They're going to close down this. They ain't closed down nothing. They just sold those studios and gave them their independence back. All of this doom and gloom about Xbox, but they didn't know a damn thing about Sony saying we're not giving you physical games anymore, and we're going to cut down your ability to have options to buy our games. They didn't know that. They didn't have no rumors on that. They didn't have no inside word on that. They didn't know a damn thing. That just popped up on people and happened. Don't trust these people, man. Dream, Schreier, all of them, scumbags. Yuck. Stop listening to these dudes. They have an agenda, and they're getting paid to carry it out. It is what it is. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Have a good day.